welcome to another edition of Heather's Long Box. Today, my guest is Dee Fish. Dee, you're originally from Florida, but you've moved a little north.
Originally, I'm actually from New York. Lived there till I was about 20, then moved to Florida for about another 25 years, give or take. And I've been here for about 7 years now.
And why did you leave Florida? Because everyone seems like they want to go to Florida.
Everybody on why would you leave Florida? And I'm like, you know how it's like we're in Pennsylvania right now, and it's mid 80s and high humidity, and everyone's miserable about it. I'm like, yeah, that's Christmas in Florida. And because I grew up in New York, I grew up at a place with seasons, and I missed them tremendously. And I didn't like sweating while putting my makeup on 11 months out of the year, or swimming out to my car.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Florida was it had its perks for a while there. I was there early enough for where Disney was still moderately affordable for a few years before everything started going crazy. Enjoyed that. But yeah, it was not a place I wanted to continue living. It's just the humidity and the heat. I hate it. I missed seasons. I missed, cool weather and leaves come Halloween, so I wouldn't die of sweat to wear anything even resembling a costume.
Well, you do look adorable in your winter hats. I do recall seeing those on Facebook.
Thank you.
I'm like, I want that one. So, who would you say has the best Comic Cons, like locally? Because you've been in New York and you've been to Florida, and you probably travel close to other states where you live. So, being someone who tables at Comic Cons,
Mhm.
which ones are your favorite?
Um, my favorite shows are still MegaCon in Orlando, Florida. It's only the last few years that I've not been able to attend that one because we've been up here, but for decades that was like my home show. That was the first show I ever exhibited at. And I used to go every year. It was always so much fun. I love MegaCon. In between Florida and here, my second favorite show would probably be Heroes Con in Charlotte. That show is always so much fun. That is that's just Comicstopia for me, and I really want to go back to Heroes before too long. Up here, there's a few smaller shows that I've enjoyed. I haven't done any of the bigger shows since we moved up to Pennsylvania. There's a few of them that are really nice. There's Three Rivers Comic Con, and usually in the Erie area. Around there, there's Steel City in Pittsburgh, which I've never actually even been to just as a person. We want to go, and it's a couple of weeks the next show. And we want to go out at least for the day to kind of scope it out and be like, hey, let's actually check this show out and see what it's like. And then there's the Erie Library Comic Con. I've worked a few times, which is in a library in Erie, right on the lake. Beautiful location. Like there's like pirate ships behind you, and you're sitting in the
Oh
library.
wow! Oh wow!
Um,
This sounds cool.
that's a lot of fun. I met some really nice artists and friends up there, so that's been a fun show. I've been out of the conventions for a couple of years. We fell out of it when we moved up here. The intention was we were going to hit all kinds of shows, and then we just kind of didn't. And I've hit a few little ones, and I was raring to get back into it. I had 4 shows set up right around January of 2020, and you can imagine why I didn't do those shows.
Oh yeah. Well, I have so many friends, and you probably have so many friends that are going to C2E2, and I'm nervous for them because I'm hearing that the monkeypox cases are increasing.
Oh, lovely.
So you have that exposure as well as COVID, and a lot of people are starting to have to mask up again.
Yep, I kind of miss the fact that nobody masks up in our area at all anymore. Haven't forever. I loved that. I loved to not like It was so easy to just ignore people and hide, and I don't have to socialize. There's a mask.
I'd be sitting in my grocery store parking lot and I'd be applying my lipstick like I always do. It was like a habit. And then I'm putting my mask on. I'm like, Heather, you're so stupid.
And then you take it off, and it's like you kissed it, like it's the napkin signature. Yeah.
Well, for a while, the only masks I could find were these like felt material ones at Target. So I took my mask on and black specks all over my lips.
Ah, that sounds gross.
Yes. So, Dee, for people who are listening who are not familiar with you as I am, can you talk a little bit about your works and maybe some projects that you're currently working on or you have coming up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been a self-published comic creator now for well over 20 years. I did the actually I have all my books right here. Ha ha ha.
Good, because I could not find my copy of Finding Dee. It was driving my daughter nuts yesterday and today, looking around the house.
I keep everything on hand for just such an emergency. So yeah, I
You
did.
did-
Starting in 2001, I did an online comic. It was a daily called Dandy and Company. That was kind of like a Peanuts meets Looney Tunes. I always described it as the slightly skewed misadventures of a dog and his boy, and I did that up until I think 2018 was the last strip I did. So I did that from 2001 to 2018 semi regularly. I've been drawing the character since I was 8, though. So I mean, the character is older than my stepson. Um, for a few years, I was working on a graphic novel called The Well Keeper. It's a fantasy adventure.
I think my
Um,
daughters have a copy of that somewhere.
and it's a story of this young woman named Zoe who inherits a power passed down from mother to daughter that connects her to the life energy of the planet, enabling her to communicate with plants and animals and other natural forces. And then she's being hunted by this dark force trying to destroy her. It was a 12-issue maxi series, and I got the whole thing finished, collected it in one big book. It was it was a big deal for me, and still something I'm really proud of. So I'd like to get it colored at some point in the future and do like a reprint because it's black and white. Most of my stuff is black and white. I can color, but I don't particularly care for the process, and it makes printing super expensive, and everything takes twice as long at least. Currently, what I'm working on, as you mentioned, is Finding Dee, which I started that in 2017, I believe. I started that a year after I came out, and it's a semi-autobiographical kind of. It's a comic strip. It's a weekly comic strip. It's semi-autobiographical, humorous retelling of the everyday crap that happens in your life when you're trying to break into comics and coming out as transgender in your 40s. So I've got a few collections of that already.
And I find the strips there's something relatable. Like everybody can kind of relate to something. Like you talk about karaoke and
Mhm.
like Heidi, your fiance, singing, and you're like, yeah, I have to go on next after that. And
Yes.
and I don't want to do karaoke, so it's like I can relate to that. Um,
I love karaoke, but she kicks most people's butts because she's got this incredibly powerful, like heavy metal rocker voice,
lead,
and
lead
she
it forward.
like rattles like window panes when she hits her notes. And then I'm sitting there and I'll be doing like I'm gonna do some Tears for Fears or Elton John, and you know maybe a Eurythmics, and she's out there yeah, and I'm just like I have one note range. And they always put us on in order where she goes before me. So
Oh,
yeah,
so
it's
not fair.
the strip is, like I was saying, it very much started as a blog actually, where I was just kind of talking about the bad things that were going on. Like, oh, this sucked and I got shitty looks in this store, and what the fuck did I do this for? Coming out as transgender in a rural, Midwestern Pennsylvania town was a very bizarre life choice, but it happens when it happens. And so early on, the strip was very, very focused on that. These days, I try to at least make sure that at least once a month, one of the week strips touches on something that's like transgender adjacent. But more often than not, it's just become kind of a chronicle of what's going on. What's happening in our day to days, the goofy stuff that we do.
Well, like her licking you. Like I can't stand to be licked, and that's just relationship shit.
Yeah,
And then you have your dog who, doesn't do well in thunderstorms. And then you've shown your stepson a little bit. So there's these dynamics that I think are very relatable.
yeah. Thank you. I learned that real early on with the strip because, you know, um, it's a different experience for me being transgender, coming out in my 40s. I'm basically dealing with stuff that, you know, cisgender women were dealing with when they were 12 or, early puberty years. And I'm just discovering this stuff as a full grown adult going, good God, bras suck. And shopping for them sucks. And
This one's digging into me right now. It hurts.
so, little weird little things like there's that Venn diagram of, cute, good, and cheap, and you can never have all three. And I would do strips about that where it was like Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider, where I'm going through the maze of deadly traps to find the perfect bra that's both good, cheap, and cute. And that strip blew up. That was one of the first strips that kind of blew up because it was where I realized that the kind of the hook of the strip is that it's all relatable. The experiences are relatable to just about everybody on some level or another. And I kind of talk about that with some of the more recent strips where I know that I'm going to, every now and again, there's this weird dynamic where I'll make fun of something in the strip and I get the general assumption is that it's something that I only just now learned in my life. Like I did a strip about boob sweat about a week ago and people were instructing me on boob sweat. And I'm like, I actually had to write in the notes, I have been fairly large my entire life. Also lived in Florida for 25 years. I know all there is to know about sweat under rolls. It's just a pain in the ass. It was just me complaining about something, but it's nature of the beast. When you do a strip like that, people are seeing a slice of a portion of a slice of your life, and it's just one of those things where they're like, I must now educate you. And you're like, oh, I fucking knew. Thank you, though.
You know what, though? I really think that's human nature. I
Oh, yeah.
remember being at the gynecologist, and you're in a room full of pregnant women, and then there's older women, and they always want to tell the horror stories to these pregnant women. Like, why would you do that? So I think it's human nature.
Oh, it absolutely is. I consider it to be one of the most true statements ever that if you put two people in a room that were born the exact same day, the exact same year, within 2 minutes of each other, the person who is 2 minutes older will be, oh, you have no fucking idea. Oh, I'm sorry. I really should have asked in advance about cursing.
No. You must not have heard me. I told you, don't worry. Don't worry about censoring yourself. I have a potty mouth myself. So
I think that was during our audio tests.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, let the fucks fly.
That was my first strip. The first Finding D strip was I had been doing all ages comics for so long, and the first Finding D strip was me going, fine, I'll fucking make a comic about my coming out. Ooh, I can say fuck in this strip. Fuckity fuck.
Dee, I had a tattoo done. It didn't turn out very well, but it's birds on my bird. And everybody's like, you don't give two flying fucks? And I'm like, well, I have a third one on the other side. They're like, looks like a mustache. But I let my middle finger fly. So
there you go.
I really, I know that you have a couple of other works, but I just really love the Finding D strips so much, and you are posting those also on your Facebook page.
Yep. I kind of took some advice from a few podcasts I'd listened to and other comic strip artists online, where it kind of like the mentality now isn't quite as like now that like ad driven content really isn't as big of a deal as it used to be. Like back in the day with Dandy and Company, I would be making money off of like Project Wonderful and Google ads, and now that stuff is all filtered out.
Mhm.
So people aren't really making webcomic money off of ads to the same degree they used to be. And so the importance of driving all that traffic to your website is not quite as big of a deal as it used to be. And I take the mentality with Finding Dee, I share it everywhere. I copy it onto Twitter every week. It's on Instagram every week. I put it on Facebook in about 6 different places. I just want people reading it, to be able to see it and come back. And then, when the books come out and I go to conventions, I've got the books and I've got that stuff going for me with as well. I've got that, and I've got the other webcomic that I draw with my friend Sabrina Pandora, Giant Girl Adventures, which is a completely different beast. It's got humor in it, but it's much more of action adventure.
She's
So
a beautiful big beast.
pardon?
She's a beautiful big beast.
Yes, yes, yes. It is a very, very fun comic. I love working on that with Sabrina. Like we'll do the Discord thing where we'll screen share and work a few days a week on it, where we're watching each other and she's watching over my shoulder, and it's like having a studio and just hanging out with friends making comics.
That's cool.
But yeah, I've got way too many projects. I'm always working on something.
Well, that's got to be though, the camaraderie and working with another creator, that's got to be a good feeling rather when you're just, alone doodling with yourself and you're self-criticizing yourself.
Yep. When I'm alone doodling with myself, I couldn't help it.
And now Webtoons has become very popular as well.
Yeah.
Are you doing something on there?
I was mirroring Finding D there for a little while, and it never got any traction. And because its interface was a pain in the butt to upload, like I couldn't figure out how to upload things and then schedule them.
Mm-hmm.
I had to upload them that day for them to go live, and the panel by panel format, and there were so many factors. I don't really work that way. I'm very traditional. I really am drawing the strip for print, so to speak. Like all the strips are designed to be seen on the page. They're all designed proportionately for a printed page. And so Webtoons being the panel by panel thing where the proportions are all kind of locked wasn't working for me. It was a big pain organizing them and getting them up there, and it wasn't resulting in really any kind of I think I was getting like 12 people were reading it, and I'm like, that's a lot of work for 12 people. And I'm kind of like, well, follow the link because there's all kinds of other places to see it. It works out great for a lot of folks, but it didn't work out for me. So it was one of the places where I'm like, well, that'll go by the wayside. I'll just push that
Well, it's
aside.
probably trial and error, finding your audience or finding where your audience focuses more.
Yep. And I think that also, you have certain kinds of comics on Webtoons. Very few of them are black and white that I've seen. You have a lot of very anime influenced stuff, and some gorgeous, gorgeous work. I've seen some comics on there that are amazing, even though I honestly have a hard time reading that format, the panel by panel style that Webtoon does.
It's a little easier on my old eyes, I have to admit. I've been reading, God, I can't remember what I'm reading. Hades and Persephone.
Oh, Lore Olympus.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a couple of comics that are, there's Lore Olympus, and then there's Punderworld, which I like as well, which I think is on one of the other, I think that might be on, I can't remember. There's so many of these things now.
There are a lot of platforms. I'm
Yeah.
paying for Twitch, and my daughter's like, "Don't you dare come on here." Well, Like, but my friend Ted Woods is on there, but I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I can't keep track of it. I got old and I'm just like, no. 20 some odd years ago when I was starting with Dandy and Company and I was figuring out how to build my own web page in a day using online tutorials. And now I'm like, what's WordPress? I don't understand. I'm the old lady in that one insurance commercial where she's got pictures on her walls. I unfriend you. That's not how this works.
That's
That's
not how
not how any of this works.
I love that commercial.
I am that lady now. I turned into that lady in my 40s.
Well, I admit, my daughter thinks I don't know how to do this, but I'm trying to teach her some responsibility. So we have the Disney Plus,
Mm-hmm.
we have HBO Max, we have Netflix, and we just signed up for Paramount. And because there's a movie she wanted to watch, and then the older one's like, "Can I get on the account too? I want to rewatch Hey Arnold." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine, football head."
I'm way too much of a Trekkie to not have Paramount Plus.
I have to catch up now.
There's so
I felt
much
like I was
Trek.
paying for cable with all of these different streaming services, but I have Elena set it up. She has to keep track of how much it is, when it's due per month, and she just thinks that I'm an old lady and I don't know how to do this, but she's learning responsibility and budgeting and
Awesome.
money. Yeah, not bad for an old lady.
No. And we've done the math with what our cable company used to charge us, and even with as many of the streaming services we have, we're still paying less, and we're getting a lot more. So,
Well, you have another book to talk about?
well, I talked about Giant Girl. I talked about Finding Dee. Those are the two books that are currently in production. I've got a bunch of other stuff that I've worked on in the past. I did a webcomic for a little while called Marjorie the Weirdlings. It was a pitch for a syndicated comic, and it never really took off. So it's just one book's worth of material. My other major project is not comic related. It's a series of werewolf novels that I've been writing for the last 2 years. The first one is almost completely fully edited. I've got my editor that I'm working with. She's got about, I think, 5 chapters left to edit. And then the first one will start coming up. I'm going to be putting it out both on my Patreon, and I'm experimenting with Kindle Vella, where I can run the chapters as episodes.
Oh, okay.
And you run it once a week, and people they buy like tokens where it's like $1 or $2 or something. And you get like 10 tokens, and the tokens can be redeemed for chapters. But the first few chapters are free. Sorry, I hate my chair, so I'm going to do that a lot.
I'm adjusting too, but that's because I've got a fucking mattress between my legs.
I just they don't make chairs that are very comfortable for my butt. My butt falls asleep, so I got to do that constantly.
I'm picturing you have more of a flat butt, Dee.
Oh yeah. I've got there's nothing to speak of. It's a desert.
I got a big bubble butt.
Oh. Then I consider me jealous.
You can have some.
That was a strip too about boobs. I did that one real early on.
You know what? Okay. I'm an H cup. Let's be honest. Okay. And I love your boob ones. They're just funny to me.
Thank you.
I love them. I know we're kind of probably on the opposite spectrum there, but and then you were quite honest about your diabetes. I just found it relatable.
Thank you. I admit I keep a lot of the diabetes out of the comic more often than not. Like I covered it when I had the pancreatitis in particular. That was last year back in early July and I was in the hospital for a while. And had to.
You look like you were in a lot of pain. You were very, I follow you on Facebook, and you had some pictures, and you just, letting everybody know what was going on.
Yep, it sucked, and it really sucked afterwards. It was the better part of almost 6 to 8 months before I could start eating like a normal person. And I still try to take it easy, but I failed miserably. I was on soup for a long time, and I got so sick of it. Lost a lot of weight, and I've managed to keep most of it off.
Looking at the right side.
Trying. I got shit for that too, though. But yeah, that's one of the reasons I don't really talk about the diabetes too often in the strip, is because I don't want the advice. Honest, as petty as that sounds, I know that if I post a strip where I'm complaining about dietary restrictions, I'm going to get recipes and, well, you should eat this, and, well, why don't you try that, or this is really good. And it's one of those things where it's like, I've been diabetic now for well over a decade. It's been, closer to two of them at this point. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I can eat. I just really, really
And
like
people
the stuff
don't
I
know what
can eat.
you've done and what you've
Yeah,
gone through and what you've tried already because,
yeah,
people don't know that I was a nurse. I mean, I'm still a nurse. I'm always going to be a nurse, but
yeah.
I let my license go. Um, and, people are trying to give me advice and they say the stupidest things.
I understand that. And that's one of the reasons why I, with some of the strips, because it's a weird double-edged sword of doing a comic strip where I'm the main character, which was not something I ever set out to do. That was never like a life goal for me. Um, it was something that just happened kind of by accident. I was still doing Dandy and Company weekly, I think bi-weekly, when I started doing Finding D. Finding D was an experiment because the blogs that I was talking about, I was writing these blogs and they were miserable. They were just me complaining and ranting and raging against the world, and it was making it worse. The more I vented, like, I'm one of those people that I've discovered in my life, venting does not work. Venting helps build the explosion. It does not do anything to alleviate the pressure. The more I vent, the more angrier I get. I can ramp up like it's nobody's business.
Flame on.
So what I started doing with the comic strip, when I started doing the comic strip, I had a very set goal and idea of, let me take these stressful situations and find a punchline. If I can do a comic strip about how nerve-wracking it was to go to the bathroom at the local movie theater, or you know some at the we had this pizza place that we go to where one of the servers kept going out of their way to misgender me, like, as loudly as possible.
I remember that.
Like, she would come up and I used like typefaces to try to make the point, but it'd be like, okay, so you had an iced tea, ma'am, and you had a Diet Dr. Pepper, sir. And to where I got so upset, I was like shaking, and Heidi's like, why don't you go get the car started and I'll be right out. I'm like, please don't say anything. So I'm just go get the car started. 10 minutes later, she comes out, and that person never served us again in the restaurant, because we were friends with the manager. Stuff like that. But to me, it was about, okay, let me take that, put it in the strip, and find a punchline in that scenario. Because if cartoon me can find humor in the worst situations, can find the humor in shitty people being shitty, um, maybe real me can use that. Maybe real me can find a way to laugh through it, or have the strength to say what I need to say in that moment where ordinarily I wouldn't. And over time, it actually was helpful. And I guess because the nature of it being relatable in the way it was, a lot of people connected to it really, really quickly, and it took off, eclipsing everything else I was working on, to the degree where I'm like, okay, I guess this is the comic I'm drawing now.
And when you think, you make your strip, you're having your creative flow going, and you're like, yeah, this is great. This is comedy gold. Um, how long do you wait and think about, should I post this or shouldn't I post this, or is this right? Maybe I should run it by my partner. Like, how does that go through your head?
I run every strip and idea past both Heidi and Sabrina from Giant Girl, because we work together so frequently that she's a great like bouncing board for stuff like that, and gives me great advice on the strips. whenever I am having like there are a few strips that I have just, I mean, there's a couple that I've drawn and realized I should not run this strip.
Mhm.
Either this strip is going to give fuel to fucking turfs and assholes and, transphobes everywhere. They're going to look at that and say, ah, look. Or it's going to be, early on, I did a lot of strips because, long story short, I used to have an alternate Facebook profile for that only my boss could see because I used to work for a megalomaniacal fuckwad who got very, very upset on the daily with what we would post on social media. Not like we were posting anything bad about work, but just the idea that we had a life outside of work upset him. Like, oh, you went and partied or you went to a comic convention.
You're not sleeping in the back on the cot I provided for you?
Yeah, you're not actually very far off.
Wow.
Actually, no, you're not far off at all because for a while there, he was putting me up in a hotel so that I could work longer nights.
Holy shit. That's not right.
No, I was in a hotel for months. Yeah, but I had that backup profile. So one day, Facebook recommended me to me. Perhaps you'd like to be friends with Dead Name. And I looked and there was, yeah. And so I did a bunch of strips about that where I'm like, well, what would it be like if you got to talk to yourself from a few years ago? And I found out it's incredibly stressful because to do that, I was giving a voice to a lot of anxiety and insecurity. And I had to stop doing it because then I'd start feeling it.
But it wasn't a healthy alternative for you.
Yeah. Same with that. I did the strips with that little demon, the flame hair demon, who was like the voice of my insecurity. I stopped doing those as well for the same reason, because I was giving a voice to my worst thoughts.
Well, I have to tell you that reading, like I contributed to a Kickstarter, I was really happy for you and supportive of your project. You Star Trekked me.
Yep.
And you also made me more aware of my surroundings and more sensitive to others that I may have overlooked. And I remember being at Motor City Comic Con and a woman dressed up as Bob Ross came in the bathroom. And this other woman who was at the sink washing her hands stopped her. And as soon as she turned around and saw her boob, she's like, oh, okay, you're good. And I'm like, excuse me, this person is just trying to go to the bathroom. Mind your business. They're not bothering you. She's like, I apologize. I said I was sorry. But you had an incident with the bathroom and that made me more sensitive. And here I am in the bathroom and this person is just trying to walk through to get to the stall.
Yep. I've been given shit for using a single occupancy locking ladies room in a local karaoke bar. A single occupancy room. I came out and there was this one woman and she goes, "What the fuck?" And she went to the owner to try to get me kicked out. The owner let her know she was free to leave because Heidi and I made a lot of friends when we moved up here. We're very, very friendly when we go to bars.
For business, you're there often, aren't you?
We're there often. We're good for business. We're very nice. We pay well. We tip. Heidi is incredibly social. I am not, but we have balance. I'm the introvert and she's the extrovert. So a lot of these places where we got into where people would try to start crap with us, there was a lot of cases where Heidi would just be like, "Be right back."
Oh,
she would have
I wouldn't fuck with your fiance.
No, I would not recommend it to anybody. No.
And it's funny because you're taller, but
significantly.
How tall is she?
Well over a foot shorter than I am. I'll go there.
Because I've learned, like I have some cousins and I've always had short friends and I've learned they're firecrackers. I'll say dynamite and my cousin Amy corrects me. She's like, I'm a cherry bomb. And they're scrappers. I wouldn't, people think because you're big that you're aggressive and you're not. You're like the Jolly Green Giant,
Yes. Right. Are you calling me a hoe?
No, I was referring to myself. I mean, I'm almost 5'9". I know I'm not as tall as you, and I'm a big gal. So, I,
Oh yeah, we have a friend. Her name is Lou. She's awesome. When she heard that, we literally almost had to physically hold her back because she was ready to pick up a bar stool and just start going to town. She showed up in the strip a couple of times. I think I can't remember,
I do remember her vaguely.
but yeah, tiny.
Brunette, right?
Yeah, very very tiny woman, very awesome woman, incredible singing voice, but also completely willing to throw down at a moment's notice. And so when that shit went down in that particular bar, we had so much support that while I was pissed off, I couldn't be that pissed off because the backup I had was kind of epic. Yeah, I mean, the owner told the woman she could go fuck off.
Cool.
And then we were pulled aside, and I was informed that I absolutely was never to even consider not using the proper restroom. So
That had to be an awesome feeling. I
it
mean,
was
I
it
know it
was an
was a
awesome
shitty
feeling.
beginning, but
Yeah. And I mean, I've had a couple of, there have been instances in other the bathrooms have been one of the bigger issues. And it took me forever to just walk in the bathroom without a massive amount of anxiety. And I mean, it's literally with like I talked to my therapist, and it's like it's what do they call it? Like the desensitizing therapy, where you have to just kind of do the thing that terrifies you over and over again to get better at it.
yes.
Works. Um,
I still white knuckle it over the bridges when I'm driving.
I understand. I understand. I always do like a head check before I go into any public restroom. I look at the room. As someone just walked in there, I still am. I behave outwardly different. I'm still nervous. It's that strip I did where it's like, for the longest time, the fear was like being chased by Jason Voorhees, and now it's Chucky. Chucky can still kill you, but you can put Chucky in a box.
Well, hopefully it's not like the kids in the stall that slide under the door and look at you like, "Hey, how are you? What are you doing?"
That's happened. That's happened. And yeah, that's terrifying because then you literally are worried about, is this kid going to be Ralph fucking Wiggum? I went into the bathroom stall and I saw a lady, and the lady had a snake in her pants, and the snake looked at me. And then suddenly you're getting arrested and brought up on like sex trafficking charges, and you're like,
And you're just trying to relieve yourself.
yeah, but again, it's one of those things where it's like, you can count on, gotten in trouble for this joke, but you can count the number of instances of a transgender person causing a problem in a public restroom on one hand of a clumsy shop teacher.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite, that shit happens all the fucking time. There's the running joke where, there are more Republican lawmakers that have been arrested for indecent behavior in public restrooms. And yet they're the ones pushing for the laws because it's politically convenient. But let's not get into that.
Well, it shows also people's insecurities.
Yeah.
I don't know why I decided to put my lipstick on my show. I guess they felt dry to me. I need them to be moist. I know some people hate that word. Moist.
I don't care.
So you are a big Star Trek fan, and I love a lot of your Star Trek references. I was teasing you about Warriors Drink one time.
Yes.
But what you've been in the industry for a very long time. What piece of nerd or geek culture did you embrace and really pushed you like, this is what I want to do?
There were a lot of things in a bunch of different directions, actually. There were a handful of very key creative moments that I can specifically point to in like cartoons, in comic strips, in more directly in animation, and in comic books. But it's like, I would say, like as a little kid, I loved like Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry and all the cartoons that were in perpetual reruns, back in the late 70s and early 80s. And then, you had, so I would watch Bugs Bunny cartoons and I'd watch Tom and Jerry cartoons. And then, every Christmas I'd watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And boy, if the name Chuck Jones wasn't always attached to the cartoons I liked the most. And it was actually the weird that opening that they did for the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie, where they explained that there were these people that helped make these cartoons, and that all of these cartoons that are in this movie were made by this one guy named Chuck Jones. And I knew the name. It was, oh, those are my favorite Tom and Jerry's. That's my favorite Bugs Bunny. The only name I ever saw for Roadrunner and Coyote, and also the name and the opening credits of The Grinch. And they all had a look to them and a style. And when I saw Chuck Jones's name at the beginning of a Bugs Bunny cartoon, I always liked that cartoon more than the other names. It's just my personal thing. I'm a huge Chuck Jones fan. And then in comic books, I'd been reading, my brother hand me down comics for a while, and there were certain times where, and this is like late 70s, early 80s, and I'm reading comics, and I liked, I was a kid, I was like Star Wars. So, of course, the Marvel Star Wars comics. And then I picked up issue 51 specifically, I'll always remember, off the rack. And it was art by Walter Simonson. And shortly afterwards, he did a fill-in issue for an issue of X-Men. It was the first issue with Rogue joining the team. And he did that issue as well, I think 181.
You're like an encyclopedia. I know I can't ever ask you a question. Yeah.
But those issues looked, and especially like at the time, X-Men was a great comic around the board. Paul Smith was doing it, so the art was gorgeous. But that Walt Simonson issue was like, ooh. And then I read that Star Wars issue, and it looked so much better than the other ones I had seen that were not Walt Simonson. And then my brother had Spider-Man comics. So he had, at the time, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and then Amazing Spider-Man. And I don't remember who the artist was on Spectacular Spider-Man, but it was John Romita Jr. was the penciler on Amazing. And that book called, why does this one look so much better than this one? And then John Romita Jr. left Spider-Man and went to X-Men. And I understand. Same as that with Chuck Jones in cartoons. In the movies, it would be for animation Don Bluth. When I saw The Secret of NIMH, and my brain exploded. And then I looked at other Don Bluth cartoons, and they all had that same look. I'm like, that same vibrancy and bounce and a life.
I can see that influence on some of your certain works.
Oh,
yeah.
if you look at if you watch The Secret of NIMH and then read The Well Keeper, oh yeah, it is all in the DNA. That's why the little kid's name is Sebastian Bluth. But I understood it when I started understanding, when I'd see Walter Simonson's name on a book, it looked really, really good. When I saw John Romita Jr.'s name on a book, I really liked it more than the other person. When I watched a Bugs Bunny that said Chuck Jones in the beginning, I liked it better than one that was, and I'll get crap for it, but a Friz Freeling or a Bob McKimson, where the characters were a little bit more static and they just kind of stood there and they didn't have as much sarcasm in the posing and the expressions. And I realized, wait, people make cartoons. People make comics. I'm a people. And that's kind of what started the OCD need to create. And it's also why I create in so many different styles, is because all these things inspired me. So on one day, I want to make something that makes me think of a Chuck Jones cartoon, or a Berkeley Breathed comic strip, or Walt Kelly comic strip, or
you like Charles Schultz.
I love Charles Schultz. I've always loved Charles Schultz. I'm personally, my preference is actually the 80s and 90s stuff, the really wobbly line, slightly less edgier stuff, but I love that stuff. Peanuts just always makes me happy. Like what's on your desk?
Hey, Chuck.
Yeah, I've got, I can just reach.
Want to play football, Chuck?
I can pull out a book at random. It's one of those things. There's always, Peanut stuff nearby. I just adore it. It makes me happy. love Peanuts. Growing up, I loved Garfield. Like I didn't carry the love for Garfield past a certain age because I think Garfield is like one of those comics where it's you age out, the comic doesn't change, it stays exactly aimed at the same 6 year olds,
Yeah.
and that's fine. It doesn't have to grow up with you. I
I
can still
think
appreciate it for what it was.
I think I went from Garfield to Kathy.
Yep, I went from Garfield to Bloom County. Um, I've always been I love that sarcastic sense of humor and a little bit of that dry, and that's a huge influence on my early Dandy and Company stuff.
Yeah,
Bloom,
I
you
can
can see
see
Bloom
that.
County all over that. And then I didn't discover Calvin and Hobbes until much later. Like Calvin, it was almost done by the time I discovered it.
Okay.
I didn't discover it until I went to art school. So I was like, and I didn't discover Walt Kelly's Pogo until I went to art school. And I was just aghast that there was a comic strip that was that gorgeous I never knew about.
Mhm.
Um,
The world still surprises you.
oh, yeah. And I mean, it's great. There's a part of me that's like, oh, I wish I would have discovered it earlier. Maybe I'd be better if I had that influence instead of this influence and stuff like that. Like I didn't just, I barely knew, I was barely aware of Jack Kirby again until I was out of high school.
But you recently posted and you showed like several of your different styles, and I can appreciate many of them. I, I'm a big fan. I personally just think that you're very talented,
Thank
and
you.
sometimes people get stuck in one mold. This is my style, and then everybody kind of recognizes, oh yeah, that's so and so. But you can do so much more than just the average Joe, I think.
Thank you. Um, appreciate that. I just, part of that is just, I'm never creatively satisfied with any one thing. If I always want to do ever since I was a little kid, I see something I like, I want to kind of do my version of it. You know, I want to do cool superhero stuff that's dark and gritty and horror looking, and which I've done. I have a self-published book I did actually back in the early '90s when I was getting out of art school called Apparition, which
Hmm.
I always got accused of it being a Spawn ripoff because I was big influenced by McFarlane, even though I created the character 2 years before Spawn premiered.
So maybe he found your stuff.
Oh, no, I do know that McFarlane created Spawn like when he was much younger. Like that
I'm
art
teasing.
exists, but it's just this weird thing where people are like, and now if anyone were to read it and they're like, "You didn't rip off Spawn, you ripped off Moon Knight." I'm like, yes, because I actually discovered Moon Knight through the listing in the handbook for the Marvel Universe handbook. I never read a comic book. I just read his listing and thought it was so cool, and it worked into my brain, and I came up with a superhero that was a little too similar. It's kind of happy because the new TV show feels more like somebody who read that bio and didn't read the comics and just
Hmm.
made the bio into a show because I liked it a lot more.
You loved the show, didn't you?
I loved the show, and I've never been a huge fan of the comic book. The comic book where it's skewed a little too Batman, a little too let's rip off Batman and not focus on the no, this character is a multiple personality and the different personalities have different abilities, and that's cool. I mean, it's dark and it's disturbing, but they did a great job with it. It's what I always wanted to see with the character in the comics. And it's one of those things where when I was reading the comics, I almost never knew he was a multiple personality because it almost never seemed to show up. It was always focused on, oh, but he's got a gadget. I'm like, I don't care. But, he's going to be punching, jackal gods. And that interested me. The TV show I thought did a fantastic job. And I hope we get more. And desperate.
Do you think they're going to do a spin-off?
Well, I hope we get a second season at some point. I know it hasn't been officially confirmed, but I would definitely like to see more. I thought it did. I hope it did really well numerically. I can't wait for the Legends figure to come out.
Yeah, you've got your home office, you have your work office, and you show pictures, because you're decorating it, and you've
Yeah,
got quite the collection. And you do some selfies. You do a great job.
thank you.
So what would you say, like, I always ask what's in your long box. So what
Okay.
is like your like your like the prize, or
I have several prizes that I pulled out in anticipation. Um,
okay.
Now, none of them are kept pristine. Everything is, I don't have books in bags. I stopped doing that a long time ago because I really do like to be able to pull out book, read immediately. Um, this actually is this is not an original. This was repurchased for me by a friend when they found out that I didn't own the real one that I used to have as a kid. But the adaptation of Return of the Jedi, this was one of my all-time favorite books when I was a kid. First, the cover alone, the Bill Sienkiewicz cover is just it's gorgeous. I loved this thing. So I have 4 different printings of this book.
Oh, okay.
Like,
This is like your love.
it's in here too, and there's a signed one on the wall just out of view.
Okay.
I really love that book. I have this. There's a 3-issue run. I've got a lot of turtle stuff actually, because a lot of this is stuff that inspired me was because I discovered in like the mid to late 80s self-publishing. I was like, wait, you don't have to just draw Spider-Man and get that job. You can have your own idea.
You can do your own thing.
And I found this. It's a 3-issue arc of Turtles by an artist writer named Michael Zulli. And I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. And it blew my mind. I'm editing myself.
You don't have to. You don't have to censor yourself.
It blew my fucking mind. Like lots of duotone, and the artwork was so meticulous and detailed, and
yeah. Oh wow, look at those eyes.
Yeah, it's such a great little 3-parter. And there was I was never a huge fan of the cartoon of the Turtles, but I found these First Comics did a series of reprints of like the first, I think, 19 issues in color and I adore these things. I had these gorgeous painted covers by Kevin Eastman. The color on the inside was all really good. And like, if you look at the Well Keeper, and then you look at
similar jewel tones,
similar with the duotones, and the non-letter, the panel borders are all wobbly. So I stole that from the Turtles straight up. This was a series of books that I found at a convention in New York in, I think, 89 or 90, called The Dark. It's written by a guy named Joe Neftali, who I'm friends with on Facebook now. It was
cool.
company called Continuum, and I just loved this weird book. It's kind of like a superhero Highlander, like immortal warrior thing.
And is that like a metallic or a foil type cover?
Yeah, it was the second printing of the first issue. The first one has a Larry Stroman cover, which is awesome, and I have them both signed because I picked up the whole everything they had. And this was hugely influential on me, even as one doing self-publishing later, because they did these. They published convention books where the creator would go and get his favorite artists to do convention sketches, and then he'd publish them as books.
Oh, that's a neat idea. That's
so like
cool.
There's like Mike Mignola stuff in here and all kinds of great artists' work in these. And so that was.
Did you go around and try to get all of their signatures too?
Nah, very few of them were there at the shows, and I've not gone around since then. I barely have the time, but whenever we're on a convention, you're locked to your table. But this book and this creator were instrumental in me kind of going, I can do my own thing when I discovered these. I don't have to just say I'm going to break into Marvel, I'm going to break into DC. I can go do my own thing. But if I have to say, if I have a single thing that is kind of my prized possession, I found an ash can of Monkey Man and O'Brien #1 that I got Art Adams to sign a few years ago.
Oh wow!
And I found this, and it was this and Jason Pearson's Body Bags #1, which I also have but not signed. And what's great about it is that these are just black and white off of a regular crappy copier. So, and then bound by like Kinko's or probably Staples.
Right.
This was what my comics looked like when I was making them at this exact time. before I had an actual ability to go to a printer or anything, I would go to Staples or the corner grocery store that had a nickel copy machine, and I would print my pages, shrink them down. So I seeing them printed, like seeing one my all. If I ever had to say who is your all-time favorite comic artist, it would be Arthur Adams, no doubt. Seeing my all-time favorite comic artist's work printed on a horrible copy machine with the same blown out lines that I see in my own stuff whenever I did it was like a light bulb moment. So it's like that's if I had to say that would be my number one prized possession, would be that ash can.
That's really cool though. Like some people are like, oh, I spent $1,000 on this and it's embalmed or whatever. but not you. You've got this piece that just really speaks to you, not just as a fan, but as a creator.
That's what most of the stuff that is really important to me. Like as far as things are like, you can only see the feet of it here. It's an old Heroes Con program book with Spider-Man and Daredevil on it that was drawn by both Ramitas, and a friend of mine had it signed by both Ramitas as a gift. So that's up on the wall.
Sweet. That's so sweet.
Because I love John Romita Jr. He's one of my favorite artists. But yeah, the stuff that is like my prized possessions are things that were important to me in key periods because they inspired me or they pushed me into a different direction or made me think about what it is I do and want to do in a different way. Sorry, my head's starting to leak the more I talk.
Oh, well, and we have about 10 minutes left because there is another show that's coming into the studio at 9 and they have to set up. But where can people find you? How can they follow you?
Oh, I'm all over the place.
We're going to Google you.
Yes. If you just most all of my comics, if you just add .com to the end of The Well Keeper, Finding Dee, Dandy and Company, Giant Girl Adventures, if you just add .com to the end of it, you will find them. I have a lot of URLs. Or you go to artofdeefish.com. I'm a fairly prominent Dee Fish. I've checked. Even the upcoming books, the novels that I'm working on, that's Lycanthropy and the Single Girl.com. Then on Facebook, it's just Dee Fish, nothing fancy. I try not to make it too hard to find me.
And you're on Twitter too?
Yep. I think what am I on Twitter? Dee Fish. It's at D Brisby Fish.
Okay. Well, before we go, I'm going to show everybody out there my little mail call.
Oh, yeah.
I have been in some art auctions, and I bought the Baroness from G.I. Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Issue 289, I think.
Okay.
And then a friend tells me he has a version slab that's available. So
okay.
I'll reach over here. Just got this in the mail.
Oh, nice. That Nathan Cersei's?
Gonna make me put my glasses on. You are correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
Yep. I know him from many a convention we worked together.
That's cool.
Really, really nice, but brilliant artist.
So my friend Eric threw some extras in for me. He was so sweet about that. I keep going the wrong way. Oh, now there's a glare. Infinite Crisis. Everyone knows I love Wonder Woman.
Nice.
Spider-Woman.
Awesome.
And then he had this entertainment guide with Gal Gadot.
Nice.
So this was pretty cool for the movie Wonder Woman 1984. Then the back is old school.
Looks like Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
It doesn't even show the signature, but yes,
Very rarely does his work have signatures because so much of it was done for like merchandising and marketing art.
Okay.
For the longest time was almost all his work. Like in the way that John Romita Senior kind of set the style guide for Marvel for like 30 years, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez literally drew the style guide for DC.
You are just amazing. That's why I put you as an expert on my group page. Because if someone has a question, or you can come up with it so quickly. Because I know that I have picked your brain before.
This is why I can't do taxes, though, because I know who these artists are and I know what issue of Spider-Man has got my favorite covers and 238.
So I picked this up off of eBay. I just found this to be very beautiful.
Oh, nice.
I got the glare. I'm trying to work around. There we go. I have another version coming that's slabbed. That's full color.
Could you lift that up just a smidge? Ah, the E-Pang Kill Tour comic. I love that comic.
Yes. So I actually have, it's got the little.
I have the regular issues right here.
Look at you. You just.
Well, Max Sarin, the artist on that, they are my current single favorite cartoonist working. Their work is astounding. I got that commission from them of me and Heidi, where it's me pushing Heidi in the shopping cart.
Don't remember if I saw that. I can't remember that one.
It's on my Facebook. I can send it to you later. But Max's work is amazing. They were the second artist on this book called Giant Days that Boom put out. It's about like this group of girls going to university in England, and it's just very slice of life, but just some of the absolute greatest cartooning I have ever seen. Every time Max does something, every time I see their work, I'm just blown away with the body language and the expressions, and it's just I bow at their altar. And they think I'm crazy for it, I think.
Well, because you're a creator, but every creator that I've come across, they have their favorite people. I mean, it's like Jennifer Lawrence going, because she sees somebody who she's just so in awe of and who has inspired her. I mean, celebrities are people too.
Oh, yeah.
That's why it's so neat when you talk to me. So I have some friends who, like, when they see Wonder Woman stuff, they pick things up for me, and I could have used this little stressor tool a couple of months ago.
That's one of those like artificial bubble wrap things that's also popular lately.
Yes. And then they picked up this bag for me as well.
Oh, nice.
So so when I bring my comics to and from the studio to show off, I've got a nice little bag to put them in. So, well, thank you for joining me today, Dee.
Oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I know that you guys are busy, but every once in a while you get out for some pizza and some karaoke.
I sometimes have to force myself because socializing in the human world terrifies me, but I force myself to get out there and experience the world.
I think it's a good thing that you do have Heidi, and I'm so glad you're not locked up in a hotel room anymore. That's awful.
Yeah. It was. That was a job that was so bad I had to quit because I was having chest pains. So I was like, yeah, no, this job is literally going to kill me, and I'll be replaced in 30 minutes.
I hope that you're in a happier space and more content.
I'm very, very happy with my day job. My boss is awesome. My job is it's as much fun as you can have working an actual job. That's not, just doing your own thing.
Oh, that's always the dream, though.
But I'm free to do my own thing. Like, my boss gets excited when I've got a new project. I don't get yelled at for having interests outside of work.
Oh, wow. You have to eat and sleep. You have a life.
How dare you? Oh, my God.
Tell me when you're going shopping next. I want to see some fun pictures.
Will do.
Are you watching? Okay, well, that's all for us today. And we're going to have Paul's story next week. And Dave Brown might pop back in just because we all know each other. And that'll be a fun day next week. So thanks for joining.